All right, Darin Martineau here. In this video, I'm going to do a review of Darwin Ortiz's Designing Miracles book. Um, I'll also talk about some other books I'm going to recommend. This being Theory Thursday, Episode 2. We have Strong Magic. Now, Strong Magic deals with the presentational aspects of magic. And in this book, he covers a lot of things in magic. Part one is the effect, talks about clarity, conviction, layers of conviction, um, convincers, on and on. The meaning, substantial meaning in magic. Part two is the character. He talks about the functions of the character. And at the Utah Magic Festival, we got to learn from Stan Allen, and he said it's not just about developing the character, it's about developing the concept of your act. You also have conveying the character, and then you have style. Okay. Part three is the act. That's the structure of the act, the unity, the variety. This would be the variety of the 7 plots of magic, which I'm going to talk about in other videos. We're going to go in depth on this. Part four is the audience, which would be audience testing, audience management, assistance, attention control, misdirection, and much more. So this I want to highly recommend if you don't have this. If you're a magician, if you're a creator, this is for you. Okay. Um, I'm going to do a review here in a moment on the Designing Miracles, which uh, is the other book of Darwin Ortiz that has to do with structuring the magic. This is one of my favorite books, and it's put out by Todd Carr, and it's called Neo Magic Artistry by S.H. Sharpe. And this is one of my favorite books. Like I said, it deals with so many things in here. It talks about the different types of conjurers. There's about 8 different conjurers. It talks about the different degrees of art. It talks about structuring your act, the importance of the elements of magic. There's the 10 elements of magic, and on and on and on and on. So I wish I had time to cover more things. I'm going to have to make more videos. The next ones I want to recommend to you, if you're a magic creator, I highly recommend, okay, the Fitzkee Trilogy. The Fitzkee Trilogy is really awesome. So you have the Trick Brain. This shows you, okay, this is by Dariel Fitzkee, okay? The Trick Brain shows you how to create magic, and it shows you ways to do that. It shows you classification of effects, the fundamentals. It goes over the 7 plots of magic. It goes over so many things in here. The invention of new trick plots. Sleight of hand translations. The ultimate objective. Mentalism and thought control. Magic by misdirection. This is very incredible for you, for your act, whether you're a close-up, parlor, or stage magician, okay? And then we have the showmanship for magicians, which is very, very important if you're going to be a professional magician, okay? Now I'm going to do a slight review of the Designing Miracles. Now, the Strong Magic, like I said, dealt with the putting the act together and the structure of the act. And then this deals with um, creating new magic, okay? So in it, he has what he calls the Darwin's laws. The first one is how lay people think is the most important subject in magic. Now, this is very important because as magicians, you see, we are manipulating their mind, okay? And it's the psychology of magic is very important. Why? Because if the magic is going to stick with them. An example would be if there's 2 magicians, okay, and one does these fancy sleight of hand stuff, the next one doesn't do anything, and the magic just happens. As you can see, the people walk away when they're trying to reconstruct it. They try to reverse engineer what happened. They would say, oh, his hands were quick to the first one. The second one, he did nothing. The magic just happened. That's a generic example. There's many more, but obviously we have effect, method, presentation. We have the pillars in which we stand, and it's about strengthening the pillars. Now, in Darwin's laws, we have Darwin law number 2. The only thing that matters about a method is how impossible an effect it produces, not how good it makes you feel inside. This is very important because it's all about the layman. It's not about what magicians think, unless you're going to be just a professional lecturer. Um, the next thing is number 3. Magic can only be established by process of elimination. Okay, the magic happens in the spectator's minds. This is very important to understand this. Okay, Darin used to say it takes people about 5 to 7 years, or at least 7 years, to become a real magician, and that's because of these elements here that they have to understand. Okay, there's many more books that I will talk about, and I've talked about in my videos. The next one of Darwin's laws is Darwin law number 4. Eliminate the correct theory before it occurs to them. Okay, this has to do with the two perfect theory, and that's, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but basically it's adding some imperfections into your magic or opening some doors, because if all the doors are closed, then that's going to lead them to, just like Sherlock Holmes, by process of elimination, they're going to figure you out. The next thing we have is number 5. Get into the habit of thinking in terms of both inner and outer realities at every point trick. Now this has to do with um, there are there are objective and subjective things. If you look in the plot, you have the plot, the 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 subplot, and this has to do with balancing all three areas. Many magicians have talked about this. That's keeping the theme in your uber premise. Okay, your premise, your sub premise, and your uber premise. Your uber premise is your script. Okay, your subtext would be the underlying message in your magic, right? So the next one we have is um, number 6. The more amazing the phenomenon, the more convincing the effect must be. And this has to do with um, the layers of conviction and connecting these pillars. Number 7, if you can mislead them as to when the effect happened, you'll guarantee they'll never figure out how it happened. So that has to do with camouflaging the methods, okay? This is an important principle in magic. That's why we have the two perfect theory and the layers of conviction. Okay, number 8, if possible, ensure that by the time the magic happens, the device necessary to make it happen is no longer in sight. So many magicians fail in this, and that is to end clean, but it's also to start and finish clean, but also to be clean throughout. And so many magicians end dirty, and this is a point that is very important. The next one happens to be number 9, and is one move at the wrong moment may be the worse than 10 at the right moment. And this has to do with the saying that Harry Lorraine made famous, and that is, if the audience feels or suspects you did something, it's just as bad as if they know you did something, because all magic is discrepant, meaning, yes, we can try and assimilate reality, but if on a psychological level, if we're nervous that our hand is palming the object. This is why it's important to take coins and cards, and I used to do as a kid, and I highly recommend it to beginners, is to walk around with these things in your hand all day long until you're not looking at it, you're not thinking about it. Every natural action, you pick up a drink, you open and close a door, your hands, you have the Vernon swing, you're not, looking at the hand. It's very important. If you're looking down and you look up, there's some things where there's some layers of conviction, layers of misdirection, more like direction of attention, right? So the next one we're going to talk about would be number 10. If an effect can be solved simply by the application of logic, the effect is no good. That's a quote from Bob Cassidy, the mentalist. Okay, number 11. The obvious explanation is usually the last one to occur to the magicians, but the first one to occur to lay people. This is very true. That's why magicians are so easy to fool, is because their mind only goes in this one direction. The next one would be don't reveal to the audience that you possess a piece of information. If doing so will put them on the path to correct method. And this ties into never tell the audience what you're going to do. And this is actually rule number 1. If you look in the old books like I do, I read tons of magic books. I love magic books because I think the secrets are the best way to hide a good secret is to put it in print, the old saying. So the first one, or one of the first, there's many. They say the first three rules of magic, never reveal a secret, never do a trick twice, and practice, practice, practice. But if you look back in the old books, the first one is never to tell the audience what you're going to do, because you have to have surprise and suspense in your magic, right? Okay. The next one is number 13. Lay people think in terms of direct methods. Therefore, it's precisely the kind of method they're most likely to uncover. So this has to do with camouflaging the methods, okay? Number 14, if you can get them to ask the wrong question, you'll guarantee they'll never arrive at the right answer. And this has to do with psychological misdirection and layers of conviction. Number 15, don't add a kicker to an effect that would allow the audience to accurately reinterpret what happened previously. This would be like if you're doing an assembly with the aces and at the end the aces aren't there, all of a sudden they're the kings. I mean, if they appeared and then changed the kings, that's one thing. But if they just were never there, then it's like, oh, they were never there. Or sometimes the kicker will defeat this. Okay, I could give examples, but we don't have time to go on this. The next one would be 16. The best way to guarantee that the spectator isn't thinking about the method when the magic happens is to ensure that he gets all that thinking out of his system before the magic happens. Okay, this has to do with layers of conviction and psychology. Okay, number 17, Darwin law. Eliminate suspicion before it forms. Okay, and this has to do with choreography of motion, timing, and misdirection, and many other elements. Okay, we'll call it direction of attention. Number 18, it's the context you create for the visual element that determines how powerful visual magic will be. So the context has to do with, um, you have the plot, the subplot, like I said, and the uberplot, and you have to keep the themes in all of those. Number 20, Darwin law. The only valid purpose of the visual element in any effect is to stimulate the audience's imagination. If it fails to do that, it will fail as magic. And this is so true. The magic happens in the spectator's minds. I think as magicians, we take that for granted too much. The next step, or the next Darwin's law, would be number 20. It's what comes before the visual moment that determines whether the moment registers as a miracle. Okay, and this has to do with setting up, even the ambiance, the music, this has to do with setting up the magic. The next one is 21. Repetition produces conviction. And this is very true because let's say that I'm doing a triumph and the spectator is not convinced that the deck is shuffled face up and face down. They're never going to give you credit for unmixing it if in the first place, okay? And there's many examples I can use of that. Michael Vincent, Dana D. Ortiz, many others, but I will save those for another video. The next one would be 22. In multi-phase effects, strive to combine methods that nullify each other's weaknesses. And this is so, so strong. And this is something I have talked about many times. And it's called the theory of cancellation of methods. Example, if you do sleight of hand, then you fault with self-working. I do this all the time, and this is why I fool magicians so hard, and they don't even realize it, because I know how to structure my magic. I'll do hardcore sleight of hand. I'll follow it with a self-working or a different principle method, which involves no sleight of hand or something else, such as mentalism, and it will just, now when they're burning you, they're watching you like a hawk, there's nothing to see. Okay? The next one has to do with 23. Actions that appear necessary but unimportant are only half noticed and soon forgotten. This is Al Baker quote, okay? This ties into actions that appear necessary but unimportant are only half noticed and soon forgotten. So this has to do with choreography of motion and naturalness. Vernon always preached naturalness. 24, actions that are unnecessary arouse suspicions. That's Al Baker quote, and that has to do with all magic is discrepant. Okay, the next one, 25, make the important seem unimportant and the unimportant seem important. This ties into your magic should Even if it's very difficult on your end, it should look very simple and very direct, like the bill and the lemon, the card to wallet. That's why the spectator has to understand the effect. They have to be able to explain it in one sentence uh, or two sentences because it has to be very strong and very direct. Okay. And this is where you make the simple seem marvelous and the marvelous seem simple. Okay. An example of that would be a Harry Lorraine force where he does nothing. I mean, I'll have to show you, and it's just like the second or third card from the top, and he does some false shuffles and stuff, and he hands the deck to the spectator, has them doing, they can do false cuts right in their hand. There's the JOC one, which I could show in other videos, which I will. And then they kill a card. Oh, they do something, do a false cut. They burn another card. Then you get to the second or third card of the deck, and the rest is all acting. It's basically like doing a crisscross force. If you built it up with so much strong presentation about how do mind readers know what they know, and you set up everything with presentation, you can take. I'm serious. You can take almost anything. Even you look at Michael Skinner, who does the ball and vase, a magic shop trick, but he does it so elegantly. This has to do with being able to make the simple seem marvelous. Next one. We're almost done here. 25. That's make the important seem unimportant and the unimportant seem important. Okay, that ties into that. Number 26. Any generalization about lay audience that is based on your experiences with a magician audience is likely to be wrong. And a good way to find this out is to, if you've never done street magic, go out on the street, because I've done it, and you find out what you think works, doesn't. Because the types of things that work. One of the formulas from my good friend who was one of the world's best street magicians, that's Chris Randall, goes by Scandal. He would do the card to mouth, his rope routine, some other things, very, very simple. Then he would do his super strong $100 bill to lemon. And I highly recommend if you're a street magician. But when you look at that versus other things like ace assemblies or et cetera, and that's a whole nother tangent. But what works on the street, you would think uh, doesn't work, does, and vice versa. Okay, it's very different because one of the things that works is the floating object because it's so visual and you have to grab their attention fast, right? So you want to master levitations and such. So that's a whole nother tangent. Okay, number 27. This is the last one of the Darwin's laws. Any generalization about lay audiences that is based on your own reactions to magic is likely to be wrong. And this has to do with what you do for magicians is completely different for laymen. And proof of that is just look at the repertoire of any professional magician, okay, or just about any successful professional magician. A lot of them are doing the same things, but when you look at what they do, what's an example of that? Well, let's talk about stage magic. Why Kevin James is one of the world's best. When you look at his bowling ball, which he sells for like $800, you look at it's like a one size. That's the thing that I want to say here. Most magicians don't understand that this is not a one size fits all approach because what works for you does not work for someone else because everyone is unique. If we were all the same, then it would be very boring, right? So when you look at the very commercial magic, like, you look at stuff like Kevin James or there's many other examples, but you look at, okay, like the multiplying bottles, very strong effect, right, for a birthday party magician or a parlor magician, or if you look at these things, but you can't just say, okay, here you go. Because if you change the presentation or if you change one thing, it changes everything. And that is a quote from Michael Weber. So if you'd like to get my free magic mini course where I kind of expand on these, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have um, every month I'm going to update it. Okay, I'm working on the 10 world's greatest magic effects that I'm going to put in there. Right now, I'm doing a lot of changes. Okay, I have over 250 products. I have more. I have um, I have many, many things. Author of over 100 books, over 250 products, but I have much, much more. But what I'm doing, if you want to get my free course, click on the link, and it will be updated with the 10 world's greatest magic tricks that I'm going to teach you, plus my magic mini course, which will tie into this theory. So that's Theory Thursday, episode 2. Have a magical day, and keep it surreal.